We're going to start recording, and I think we're on. It's because he likes you. The no, he does. So we're live. I think. Yeah, we're. I did. Their new World Series championships. Did those come in the mail today? Delivery? Nice. Nice. I don't think you should be allowed to wear those Dodger. So Mike is wearing a Dodger and Mary are both wearing Dodger. Let me make it real clear. Mary deserves to wear it. Mike, even a month ago was telling me the Dodgers are not going to win the World Series.
Go all the way.
Except for you told me that they weren't going to beat the Padres.
No, I didn't say that. I said if.
But you also said they weren't going to beat the Padres. Yeah, you did. It's okay. It's all right. It's all right. You 100% did. 100%. I had to talk you into not giving up. But that was like 10 times during the year that Mary, come on, 10 times must have been that I talked him into not giving up. And she probably had to do it 100 times, 150 times. But no, because they didn't lose that many times. They only lost 60 times. So the rest of the times you didn't have to cheer them up. But anyways.
During the games though, when New York would score a run.
Interesting.
It's over.
Interesting. Well, lots of stuff has happened since then, guys. So that's old news. That's already old news, I think. We've left that place a long time ago. But tonight we're going to talk about dreams. And a lot of people wanted to be part of this discussion. I don't know where everybody is, but let's see if anybody's online already, because this isn't it. Yeah, there's a few of you online right now on Facebook. This is a really interesting text, which again, in the context of what we're reading about right now about blessings, how do we get into this about dreams? And I'm telling you tonight, that's all we're going to read about is dreams. It shows you again, first of all, that the Talmud is not always about what you think it's about, but it also tells you that, as we're going to see, there is a very spiritual connection to dreams, and that dreams are definitely something that we see from the standpoint of blessings and curses and definitely meaning. So the discussion here takes off on page 55A9. There's a kind of discussions about life and good life and how do we determine a good life and those kind of things. And that's how we get into a dream discussion. And the text actually begins with this, which is Rav Yehuda said in the name of Rav, 3 matters require a plea for mercy to bring them about: a good king, a good year, and a good dream. These 3 things, kings, years, and dreams, are all bestowed by God, and one must pray that they should be positive and constructive. The Gemara enumerates the source for these cases. A good king, as it is written, the king's heart is in the hand of the Lord, as the water courses. He turns it ever he will. That's from Proverbs, a line from Proverbs. And then a good year, it says, the eyes of the Lord, thy God, are always upon it, from the beginning of the year even until the end of the year. That's from Devarim, from Deuteronomy, from the Torah. And for a good dream, it says, O Lord, by these things men live, and altogether therein is the life of my spirit. Wherefore you will recover me and make me to live. And that's from Isaiah. Due to the apparent etymological similarity, the word tachlimeni is interpreted to come from the word halom, dream. So the word literally is not necessarily dream. It is you recover me, but it comes from the word halom, which they say is similar to the word halam, which means to dream. So
Dreams as an aspiration.
well, you're going to see. The rabbis are saying that these things are gifts from God. Good rulers, good years, and good dreams. Now, good year, obviously, they're talking more during the times of agricultural times when people needed good crops and those kind of things. Interestingly, of course, one of these books is Proverbs is from the book of Ketuvim, the 3rd part of the Bible. the miscellaneous part, the part that we're reading on Tuesday mornings now, that's Proverbs and Psalms and those kind of things. The next is the Torah, the first 5 books. And then the last one is from the book of prophets. So you can see from Isaiah. So you can see that all 3 sections of the Tanakh are represented. And the rabbis really love doing that. They don't always do that, but oftentimes they'll quote 3 things. And they like to quote one from each section of the Bible. One from Torah, one from Nevi'im, and one from Ketuvim. Not necessarily in that order, but they love to bring all 3 books together. They kind of recognize that there's like a totality, that if you find the same idea in all 3 books, that means it runs through the Bible. In their minds, it's in all 3 books. So they like that. When that happens, they feel a sense of completion. They always like to do 3s. That's like the rule of 3. You know, they used to do in Star Trek, they call the rule of 3. They would use 2 things that you heard of, and then the 3rd thing would be like from the future that you didn't know. That was the Star Trek rule of 3, right? They'd say like George Washington, Abraham Lincoln, and Sargon the Third or whatever, and you'd be like, oh yeah, we knew that. We know the Star Trek rule of 3. So yeah, the rabbis have their rule of 3, which is let's use all 3 books of the Bible, and then let's do and let's try to get them from the different sections if we can. Yes. 3 sections. 3 sections, the 3 sections, right? In Daniel and Chronicles are both in Ketuvim in the last section. Yeah. So they're both in that 3rd section, the miscellaneous section, because that,
is that what it is?
yeah, miscellaneous. So let's take a look. And yeah, some crazy going on. So let's look at a little bit further. Well, I mean, I don't want to skip over this too fast, but then they also go, this is not about dreams. Rabbi Yochanan said, 3 matters are proclaimed by the Holy One, blessed be he himself: famine, plenty, and good leader. The Gemara enumerates the source for these cases. Famine is written, for the Lord is called a famine. And it came upon the land 7 years. That's from Kings. Plenty, as it is written, and I will call for the grain and increase it and lay no famine upon you. That's from Ezekiel. And then a good leader, as it is written. And the Lord spoke to Moses, saying, I have called by name Bezalel. So it's a slightly different version. There's Rabbi Yochanan's versions. That's Rabbi Yehuda's version. What's interesting about those are the similarities. I mean, they're actually more similar than they are different. Well, what's really interesting, of course, is that a good leader is in both. One is called a king and the one's called a leader. And then, of course, famine and plenty are both kind of connected to agriculture. There is, but dreams isn't in that one. So it's not necessarily about dreams, but we're going to get back to that. Interestingly, though, I will point out that as I was reading this week, I said to myself, isn't that interesting? In the last month and a half, we've had a new year start, and we have kind of a new king starting. And now a new dream, maybe. Who knows? A good dream. I don't know if any of these things are good yet. It's too early to tell. But we hope they're good, right? We hope that we get all of these 3 things. But it was kind of ironic as I was reading this. I thought, a good year, good king, and a good dream. Who knows? Who knows? But it's funny we had all 3. We're going to get to that. So that's Rabbi Yehuda's. And it said it actually in the name of Rav. And then we have Rabbi Yochanan. So now, because the text from Exodus above mentioned Bezalel, who was the guy that Moses picked to do, or God picked, and Moses used to build the ark and all the wonderful things in the tabernacle, right? Bezalel was the architect and the artist. Again, this is not about dreams, but we're going to get to it. I was going to skip over this part, but might as well read it. We're here in the Talmud, and let's read it. It's an interesting text, a little bit about Bezalel and about how maybe it's a little connected to dreams in a sense, but it's really about how God works with people. And here's what it says. With regard to Bezalel's appointment, Rabbi Yitzhak said, one may only appoint a leader over a community if he consults with the community and they agree to the appointment. As it is stated, and Moses said unto the children of Israel, see, the Lord has called by name Bezalel, son of Uri, son of Hur, of the tribe of Judah. The Lord said to Moses, Moses, is Bezalel a suitable appointment in your eyes? And Moses said to him, Master of the universe, If he is a suitable appointment in your eyes, then all the more so in my eyes. And the Holy One, blessed be he, said to him, nevertheless, go and tell Israel and ask their opinion. Moses went and said to Israel, is Bezalel suitable in your eyes? And they said to him, if he is suitable in the eyes of the Holy One, blessed be he, and in your eyes, all the more so in our eyes. So you can see the people took the appointment. Now, the interesting thing in this discussion, by the way, is an interesting HR discussion, which is when you hire somebody or when someone is hired for you, do you take responsibility for the hire? And in the end, no one's taking responsibility for this hire. They're all passing it to God, which I thought was an interesting, like, that really does happen. Because if your boss hires somebody to work in your department, if you will, and it's not your call, what do you do about that? You can either say, I really don't want this person. I didn't ask for this person. Or you could say, and again, Moses wasn't qualified to build the ark himself. So it wasn't like he was saying, why are you putting someone else in this? I know how to do this. But there also is this kind of thing like, it ain't my call, God. You made the call. And so I think there's actually a really human thing here, which is that as much as Moses, and again, this is not in the Torah. This is the Midrash. This is the rabbis inventing this conversation around what the Torah said. The Torah said only, I have called by name Bezalel, son of Uri of the tribe of Judah. And if you look at the whole text, I have endowed him with divine spirit of skill and knowledge and every kind of craft to cut stones, and goes through all of those things. And he's going to make all that stuff. And the next line is the line about keeping Shabbat, which is the famous lines that we use from V'shamru b'nei Israel, right? Keep the Shabbat, right? Make it holy.
Where's that?
In Exodus chapter 31.
31.
Yeah. So this is the line that we sing. V'shamru b'nei Israel et ha-Shabbat la'asod et ha-Shabbat. So what's interesting is as God gives his architect, Bezalel, the directions, he also tells him, you got to keep Shabbat. And again, this conversation is not there. But the rabbis invent this conversation to basically say, God, the reason why he did this is because God wanted Moses to be a part of it, and Moses wanted the people to be a part of the decision. Look, it's just an interesting HR decision. Yeah, this is a lot of stuff right here.
I find it very interesting how specific it is, going back, right? So like I would never remember Exodus 31 and how it's specific to Bezalel, right? And now rereading it afterwards, when we discuss it through these sections.
Oh yeah.
It's like, go back 2,500 years, the scribes, and I just find it very, or 3,000, whatever it was, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Did they find evidence of these things in the scrolls?
Of what?
Like this part, Exodus 31.
Nope.
No.
There's no evidence for this other than, again, this kind of idea that the ark must have been built by God's direction. But Bezalel, again, has this, the Torah basically says that God gave him this understanding. And so it wasn't like, he just made this stuff up. God literally puts the blueprints, downloads it into his head, and he does it. We've mentioned this before. The Art Institute in Israel is called the Bezalel Art Institute. So they're Cal Arts, if you will, or their art. They're great. I don't know what the best art school is in America, but the best art school in Israel is called Bezalel, and it started even before Israel. It was established in 1948. In the 1920s, they'd already established Bezalel as the Art Institute, and named after this guy from the Bible. But let's read the section that we're really getting into. But we read about dreams being important, and we get to this discussion again after this discussion about Bezalel. It really is not about dreams, but about wisdom and about God kind of giving people direction. Then the rabbis turn back in this section in verse 15, in chapter 15 or paragraph 15, sorry, related to what was stated above, that one should pray for good dream. The Gemara cites additional maxims concerning dreams and their interpretation. And that's what we're going to get into today. But I wanted you to see where it was before. And here's what it says. The first one, Rav Chisda said, one should see any dream and not a fast. In other words, any dream is preferable to a dream during a fast. So it's good to dream without having had to fast in order to get that dream. We'll come back to that in a second. Rav Chisda said, a dream not interpreted is like a letter not read. The commentary on it is, as long as it is not interpreted, it cannot be fulfilled. The interpretation of a dream creates its meaning, which is interesting, which we're going to get into as well. But that line is one of the most famous lines about dreams in the rabbinic text, and actually in any Jewish text. Going back even to the Bible, this is one of the most famous lines. It's often quoted. A dream not interpreted is like a letter not read. We're going to get to that. That's going to be in the discussion here. And they've already kind of given it away by the commentary here, which says the interpretation of the dream creates the meaning. So the interpretation of it is very, very important. What I find interesting, and you're going to see it in a second, is that dream interpretation clearly in the ancient world, especially for our people, was a form of psychological, if you will, therapy, but also considered to be, to some extent, I don't want to say just fortune telling, because it wasn't, but it was also kind of a way to understand and have meaning for your life. Now, some of what you're going to see is pretty amazing, and some of it you're going to see is going to be mind-blowing, because you're going to realize that the Jewish people understood over 2,000 years ago the power of dreams and what dreams actually do. Now we've learned a lot more about dreams in the last 50, 60 years, but there's things in here that we knew 2,000 years ago that we're just discovering today. And there's a lot we don't know about dreams still, but we're learning more. And what's interesting is some of what you're going to see. I think most of what you're going to see is going to be remarkably accurate and probably stuff we should have thought about a long time ago as humanity, not just the Jewish people. These are all sayings of Rav Chisda. Rav Chisda said, a good dream is not entirely fulfilled and a bad dream is not entirely fulfilled. And Rav Chisda said, a bad dream is preferable to a good dream. That's interesting. And again, the commentary here, because we're going to read it later, as a bad dream causes one to feel remorse and to repent. And Rav Chisda said, a bad dream, his sadness is enough for him. A good dream, his joy is enough for him. And again, this means that the sadness or joy engendered by a dream renders the actual fulfillment of the dream superfluous. It's like not necessary after you've already had enjoyment from the dream. Similarly, Rav Yosef said, even for me, the joy of a good dream negates it. So that one was from Rav Yosef. Even Rav Yosef, who was blind and ill, derived such pleasure from a good dream that it was never actually realized. So sometimes, again, there's this understanding that if you get so much joy from the dream, it doesn't even have to come true. If you enjoy the dream so much. Rav Chisda said, a bad dream is worse than lashes. As it is stated, God has so made it that men should fear before him. And Rabba Bar Barchana said that Rabbi Yochanan said that a bad dream that causes, that is a bad dream that causes man to fear. So you can see lots of different takes on dreams. Some that good dreams are not even as good as bad dreams, because good dreams don't necessarily change your behavior, whereas bad dreams can actually help you. Whereas other people say bad dreams are just bad. Now we're going to get into this discussion of like why, because all of these things so far are just maxims, they're just sayings. We're going to get into the whys coming up. The rabbis are now going to explain this. They've already quoted one text, which really doesn't seem that close to what we're reading, which is God has made it that man should fear before him, which is from Ecclesiastes, by the way, the same book that we read at Sukkot. It's a very interesting book. Ecclesiastes 3:14, if you look at it, like a lot of Ecclesiastes, like a lot of the book of Proverbs, are sayings, right? What's really interesting about chapter 3 is that chapter 3 begins with this very famous, which you know better as, to everything turn, turn. There is a season, turn, turn, and a time for every purpose under heaven. Time to be born, a time to die. Yeah. That's Ecclesiastes chapter 3, folks.
Pretty interesting, because they must not have slept well back then. Right? No, right, we're told that if you remember your dreams, that means you really weren't in REM.
Well, we're going to get to that because they do talk about whether you remember your dreams or not. They definitely believe that remembering your dreams is important. And you're right. Usually it means that your sleep wasn't strong enough for you not to have, for you to have exited your REM sleep. Yeah. So, but let's look at why, and let's look at where we get to with this, which is interesting because, again, a lot of this stuff is stuff we're just learning now. So let's look at some of the lines from the Bible about dreams. With regard to the verse, the prophet that has a dream, let him tell a dream. And he that has my word, let him speak my word faithfully. What has the straw to do with the grain, says the Lord? And that's from the line in Jeremiah. What do straw and grain have to do with a dream? Rather, Rabbi Yochanan said in the name of Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, just as it is impossible for the grain to grow without a straw, so too it is impossible to dream without idle matters. Even a dream that will be fulfilled for the future contains some element of nonsense. Now, this is a really interesting thing because what the Talmud just said is that not everything in your dream means literally what it literally means something. There's things that happen in our dreams that are, as they kind of explain, nonsense. They're the straw to the grain. The grain needs the straw it needs to grow on that straw, right? It needs to be on that. The good stuff on the grain needs a whole lot of other stuff, right? We only use the little top of the stalk, right? The grain to eat. So there's a lot of stuff in our dreams that are chaff, that are just garbage. So they recognize that there's stuff in our dreams that are not necessarily they're not necessarily the nugget, right? There's a piece of that. So there's stuff in our dreams that we don't have to always say, well, what about that? Well, that didn't seem like it could happen. Well, maybe it can. Maybe it's not real. Maybe it's just some image that you brought into your dream. So the rabbis recognize that there's parts of our dreams that are not necessarily part of what we're looking at. So if you talk to an interpreter, you tell them a dream, and they don't interpret the whole dream, it's not that they're not thinking that the dream wasn't important. They're just kind of saying, well, maybe that's not the part that you actually need to focus on. If you're telling the story, there's a lot of stuff in the story, but let's get to the point. Let's get to the piece that's the important part. So that's what happens in dreams. So that's what the line from Jeremiah tells us. On a similar note, Rabbi Berachot said, even though part of a dream is fulfilled, all of it is not fulfilled. From where do we derive this? Behold, from the story of Joseph's dreams, as is written, and he said, behold, I have dreamed a dream. And behold, the sun and the moon and the 11 stars bowed to me. That's from Genesis, right? From Joseph's dream. And at the time, his mother was no longer alive. So according to the interpretation of that dream, the moon symbolizes Joseph's mother, right? Rachel. Even this dream that was ultimately fulfilled contained an element that was not fulfilled. So when Joseph had that dream of the stars and the moon and the sun all bowing down to him, Rachel was already dead. Because remember, Rachel died giving birth to Benjamin. So if he sees her in the dream, and it happened after Benjamin was born, which he's one of the 11 brothers, right? Then the moon representing his mother couldn't have happened because that didn't happen. Now we're going to get to this because this dream is fulfilled, and the rabbis actually talk about the fact that it takes 22 years for the dream to be fulfilled. Right? He has to go down to Egypt. He's going to be a slave. Then he's going to get arrested, and then he's going to go. And there's going to be the years of plenty, and then the years of famine. And if you add up all the years, it's 22 years. So the dream took 22 years. He was 17 years old when this happened. He was a teenager, and the dream doesn't get fulfilled until he's almost 40. So dreams don't necessarily come about right away. We're going to get to that. But they're also saying just because some part of the dream is fulfilled doesn't mean the whole dream gets fulfilled. So there's things in your dream that are, number one, just crazy, that don't make sense and aren't really part of like what we're really saying is the meaning. And then they're also saying not everything in the dream has to be fulfilled. Look at Joseph's dream. Nobody says that that dream didn't happen. Of course the dream happened, but not everything happened. And they admit that. They're actually saying that's true.
Dad was pissed.
His dad was pissed, but his dad did, well, when the brothers come down and bow before him, technically speaking, his father doesn't even bow before him because the father's not there at first. But the point is that, again, when the brothers come and bow before him, they don't know he's Joseph at the time, but there are 11 brothers that bow before him. So, look, I mean, spiritually, you can make the argument they all did bow before him because they recognized, or they didn't recognize him, but they recognized his power, not recognizing him, but recognizing his power. But regardless, the rabbis point to this as a point of saying, not everything has to happen for it to be fulfilled. It's still mostly fulfilled. It's 90% fulfilled. So they say that too. Now, oh yeah, here's the line. Didn't have to go far. Thought it was further up. From the same source, Rabbi Levi said, one should always anticipate fulfillment of a good dream up to 22 years after the dream. From where do we derive this? From Joseph, as written in the story of Joseph's dreams. These are the generation of Jacob, Joseph being 17 years old. That's from chapter 37. That's when he has the dream. That's right at the beginning. He's leading his flock with his brethren. And as written, Joseph was 30 years old when he stood before the Pharaoh. So that makes him 30. From 17 to 30, how many years are there? 13. And add the 7 years of plenty, right? And before the famine, and then 2 years of the famine, right? Because the family comes down after 2 years of the famine. He tells them there's more years coming, right? Because he's helping them. He says, you better come down now because this is just the beginning of the famine. But that's 7 years plus 2 years is 9 more years plus the 13. The total is 22. And only then was the dream fulfilled when his brothers came and bowed to him. So what does it tell us? It tells us there's a statute of limitations on dreams. If you have a dream, and you, by the way, you can remember it for 22 years, it doesn't come true. It's not coming true. That's the limit. That's the limit for a dream is 22 years. That's what they said. So,
Are they picking things from
the Bible.
Torah?
Yeah.
Trying to explain.
No, well, they're explaining why dreams are important, and they're using one of the most famous stories of dreams. It's not the only story of dream, but it's really the most famous story of dreams. And Joseph's dreams are going to be quoted a few times. The dreams that he had when he was in the land of Canaan, this dream, but also the dreams that he had interpreted for Pharaoh when Pharaoh told him his dreams, right? Because when Joseph has his dreams, we always like to point this out when we read the story. In Genesis chapter 37, when he tells his brothers his dreams, he gets in trouble. Right? Interpreting, well, he doesn't really interpret the dreams. He lets them interpret the dreams, but it's pretty clear when he says to his family, I had a dream that there were 11 stars and the sun and the moon were all bowing down to me. There are 11. It's kind of a very specific number. The brothers all knew. And again, as John pointed out, his father was pissed at him. Jacob was not happy. Jacob, it says, took the matter to heart. He realized that Joseph was getting into trouble. So when Joseph tells other people his dreams, he gets in trouble. When he interprets other people's dreams, he gets rewarded. So there's an interesting lesson in there, which the rabbis don't point out, but I always like to point out that we're sometimes better off letting someone else interpret our dreams, or not even necessarily sharing our dreams with people who are going to be upset with our dreams. But when we're helping other people interpret the dreams, then there's There's better reward for that. We'll get into less trouble doing that. So Rav Huna said, a good person is not shown a good dream, and a wicked person is not shown a bad dream. Rather, a good person is punished for his relatively few transgressions with bad dreams, and a wicked person is rewarded for his relatively few merits with good dreams. So here's an interesting kind of thing, which is like kind of an explanation of why do good people have bad dreams and why do bad people have good dreams. And the rabbis are kind of saying, you don't want to have good dreams, because if you're having good dreams, it means you really aren't very good, and you're not going to get a corrective dream because it's not going to sit with you anyways. You're not going to do anything about it. If God sent you a bad dream, what are you going to do about it? You're not going to change your behavior. And so the people who get good dreams, well, they get to have good dreams in this world, but they don't get to have good life in the world to come. And so the rabbis oftentimes say when someone gets good things, good dreams, good success, right, good life, they ain't getting it in the next world. They're enjoying it now. They don't get to enjoy it then. So do you want to enjoy it now during the 70, 80 years you get of life? Or do you want it maybe 90 years if you're lucky? Or would you rather get it for eternity? And the rabbis will always say, when you see somebody who doesn't seem like they should be getting what they're getting, just know that they're enjoying the stuff now, where you get to enjoy the stuff forever.
So does that mean I need to be bad?
No, it means if you're living a good life, don't be so sure of yourself, is what it's telling us. But it's definitely telling us, if you think you're living a good life because you deserve it, we're going to get to it. The issue is that if you earn it and you're not sharing it with other people, your bounty, then you're being selfish. We're going to get to that though.
The rabbis are socialists.
They understand that rich people. There's a famous line from the Christian Bible, right? It's harder for a wealthy person to enter heaven than it is for a camel to go through the eye of a needle, right? The Christian Bible didn't invent that. That came from the rabbis. So they recognized that the rabbis did, that it's not that rich people don't get to heaven. It's just they have a challenge because if they've lived this life to only enjoy stuff, then they have probably ignored other people along the way. And that doesn't mean they're socialists. It just means that they understand that if you're focused on your own enjoyment, you're probably not helping other people. They also taught in a Baraita, the rabbis, all of King David's life, he never saw a good dream. In all of Achitophel's life, he never saw a bad dream. Now we're going to get into Achitophel and David in a second. But again, King David never had a good dream. Well, that means he had a kind of a tough life, and he did have a tough life. But the fact that he never had a good dream was interesting, because the rabbis are essentially saying it's because he would merit it in the world to come. Achitophel, who's kind of his rival, says he never had a bad dream. Now, Achitophel, it does not say it here, so let me just explain it. But this is a proof text for this one, which is, this is the same thing. So if you look at Achitophel, Achitophel was the guy who was a counselor for Achitophel was the counselor for Absalom. When Absalom revolted against his father, Achitophel, who had worked for David as a counselor, ended up going over to the side of Absalom. And Absalom and by the way, Achitophel is considered like a genius, like a crazy strategic genius, like understood everything about everybody, and was like an evil genius, but like understood human behavior, tactician, knew how to get everybody. So Achitophel had given Absalom the advice to go out and attack David and his army right away. And David had a guy working for him. Well, I'm not going to go all the way back, but you can see right here. His name was Hushai. And Hushai went to Absalom and told him not to attack yet. He said, your dad's waiting for you and he knows exactly what you're going to do. And that wasn't true. If Absalom had listened to Ahithophel and listened to his advice and attacked at that moment, he would have destroyed David's army and Absalom would have won. But Hushai was working for David behind the scenes as a spy, not just a spy, as a literally undermining Ahithophel and undermining Absalom from within the plant. So Hushai, Absalom listens to him, and Ahithophel sees that his advice was not taken, and when Ahithophel saw that his advice had not been followed, he saddled his donkey and went home to his native town. He set his affairs in order, and he hanged himself. Yeah, that's the end of Ahithophel. Now, look, the rabbis know there's not a lot about Ahithophel. We don't really understand like all the levels of what he did. But we know that he's not a good guy, right? We know that he's a bad guy who went against David. And so David, on one hand is a hero. And the rabbis want to kind of tell you that he didn't have an easy life, which we know from the Bible. But it extends to the fact that his dreams weren't even pleasant. He had bad dreams. Like he would know the future of what's going to happen to his own family, that his son would revolt against him, that his other sons would kill each other, all these things that he maybe saw or understood that were happening in his own family, he was haunted by it in his lifetime. But the rabbis say, again, that's because he was a good person. Now, again, he's not always good. He doesn't always do good things, but they understood him to be a good person, a person who was heroic in some very important ways. So he never had a good dream. That's how bad his life was. The Gemara raises a difficulty. Is it not written, no evil shall befall you, neither shall any plague come near your tent? And Rav Chizda said that Rav Yirmiyah bar Abba said, in an explanation of that verse, this means that you will be frightened neither by bad dreams nor by evil thoughts. Neither shall any plague come near your tent, means that you will never find your wife with the uncertain status of a menstruating woman when you return from a journey. This proves that it is impossible that a righteous person will experience bad dreams throughout his life. Rather, one might say that he does not see bad dreams. Others see bad dreams about him. Now, we're going to get into something else, which is when you dream about somebody else in your dreams, something bad happening to that person. So they're kind of arguing whether they're opening it up to the fact that it's not your dream, but somebody else dreaming about you. What is this whole business about your wife menstruating when you come home from a journey? Well, basically means you can't have sex with her. You've been gone for a long time and you don't get to have sex with her. So they're basically saying, along with a plague, or along with bad dreams and bad thoughts, what's a really bad thing? That's kind of a bad thing too. That's what they said. Well, we talked about the fact that a couple of weeks ago, they talked about how to pee when you're outside. They talk about everything in the Talmud. Talmud doesn't hold anything back. And they were right. They basically said when you're peeing, you should pee sitting down. I mean, that's what they said in the Talmud. They actually said that. There's a whole discussion about that on Curb Your Enthusiasm. And they said it 2,000 years before Larry David. Larry David was following the Jewish tradition. I want to tell him that one day. The Gemara asks, when he does not see a dream, is that a virtue? Which is what John is saying. When he does not see a dream, is that a virtue? Didn't Rabbi Ze'era say, anyone who sleeps 7 days without a dream is called evil, as it indicates that God does not wish to appear to him even in that indirect manner? allusion to this as is stated. And there's a line from Proverbs. And he that shall lie satisfied, v'savea, he will not be visited with evil. The sages said, do not read it as satisfied, v'savea, but rather read it as seven, vesheva, which is an allusion to the fact that one who sleeps 7 times and does not experience a dream is considered evil. Rather, one must say that David saw dreams, and the Berachot says as follows: David certainly saw dreams, but he did not understand what he saw. So now they're talking about the fact that, like, if you don't understand your dreams and it is a bad dream, do you get upset about it? Now, that's another possibility, which we're going to have discussed. So part of it is you being in someone else's dream versus what you dream. Another thing is remembering the dreams, and another thing is having somebody interpret it and understanding what that dream means. If you don't understand what the dream means, was it really a bad dream? Those are all going to be stuff we're going to discuss. Rav Kuna Bar Ami said that Rabbi Padat said that Rabbi Yochanan said, one who sees a dream from which his soul is distraught should go and have it interpreted before 3. The Gemara is surprised by this. Interpreted? Didn't Rav Chisda say a dream not interpreted is like a letter not read? If one is concerned about a dream, why would he actively promote its fulfillment? Rather say as follows: he should better it before 3. He should bring 3 people before and say to them, I saw a good dream, and they should say to him, it is good, and let it be good. May God make it good, and may they decree upon you from heaven 7 times that it will be good, and it will be good. Afterwards, they recite 3 verses of transformation from bad to good, 3 verses of redemption, and 3 verses which mention peace. We're going to get to that, so don't worry. I know it sounds crazy, but what they're saying here is that having your dream interpreted, how could you even say, which is why they say this, interpreted, question mark, if you have it interpreted and you're upset about it already before you even had it interpreted, why would you go have it interpreted when people are going to then make it happen? It's like a letter unopened. You really want that letter opened? You want that letter open? You already know what's in the letter. You've had the dream and you're distraught from the dream. So they're saying, why would you have it interpreted? And they're saying, you don't have it interpreted. You have it fixed. And so here they're going to get into this very interesting idea that your dream can actually be transformed. It can be fixed. The dream can actually become a dream that does not scare you, that does not cause you to be upset. And this is where we start to get into an idea that I think is important here, which is that I think the rabbis see this not just as dream interpretation, but as a psychology, as a way of kind of doing therapy with somebody, which is how do you take somebody who's distraught? And the key focus here is the word, his soul is distraught, right? So if his soul is distraught, right, if he's dealing with such extreme emotional anguish on this, he needs to do something about it. And so when he's going before these people for it to be fixed, this is not just a matter of dream interpretation, clearly. It's helping somebody feel not afraid. So somebody's dreaming about something happening to themselves, and it's causing them to be upset. Because on one hand, they're worried that it's going to actually come to fruition. They're actually worried that this is what's going to happen. Now, the rabbis have already said, just because you dream it doesn't necessarily mean it's going to happen. But I think people would get, and not back then, but today, people have a dream that feels so real and feels so scary that people are afraid of it. They're afraid of what it actually means. Is this really going to happen to me? Is this something that I need to do something about? Do I need to fix this? Is this really a premonition of what's going to happen? And so people get to a point where they're distraught about it. And so the rabbis actually come up here they give us a remedy. Watch what this remedy is. The Gemara elaborates. And they actually start with the end first. Or no, they do it this way. 3 transformations, right? 3 verses in the Bible that talk about transformations, right? The first one is from Psalms. You transform my mourning into dancing. You loosed my sackcloth and girded me with gladness. Psalm 30. We actually listened to that. Debbie Friedman version. You turn my mourning into dancing. And then the next line is from Jeremiah. So first one's from Ketuvim. The next one's from the Nevi'im. Then shall the virgin rejoice in the dance, and the young man and the old together. Or I will transform, or I will flip their mourning into joy, and will comfort them, and will make them rejoice from their sorrow. And that's from Jeremiah. And nevertheless, the Lord your God would not hearken unto Balaam, but the Lord your God transformed the curse into the blessing unto you, which is from Devarim, from the Torah, which is the story of Balaam and the curse turning into a blessing. The word that's used in every one of those verses is hafchata, which means to flip. Hafchata doesn't just mean to like transform, it means to flip it. I would say not transform, but to flip. Because transform could be like, I just made it bigger, or I changed the form of it. This hafach literally means to flip it, to turn it over. Turned it over, flipped it over onto the other side, and looked at the other side. So this is flip my dream, turn my dream into a blessing, from the feeling of it being a curse into a blessing. So that's the first thing. You say 3 verses of transformation. Next, 3 redemptions. So this is using the word pada or pidyon as the root. The first one's from Psalms. He has redeemed my soul in peace, so that none came near me, for there were many that strove with me. The next one, the redeemed of the Lord shall return and come with singing unto Zion, and everlasting joy shall be upon their heads. They shall obtain gladness and joy, and sorrow and sighing shall flee away. That's from Isaiah. And the next one's also from the prophets, though. This one's not from the Torah. And the people said to Shaul, shall Jonathan die, who has wrought this great salvation in Israel? So the people rescued Jonathan, that he died not. And that was when Saul almost killed his son Jonathan. So you can see that these are redemptions. These are things where, again, something got flipped. Supposed to be bad, but it turned out to be good. It was redeemed. And here's the ones about peace. First one is from Isaiah. Shalom, shalom. Peace, peace to him that is far off and to him that is near, says the Lord that creates the expression of the lips, and I will heal him. A beautiful line from Isaiah. Then the Spirit clothed Amasai, who is chief of the captains. Yours are we, David, and on your side, you son of Yishai. Peace, peace be upon you, and peace be to your helpers. And that's from a line from Chronicles, which is a retelling of the stories from Solomon. But that line is not in, Samuel, the book of Samuel, the story of David and Solomon, and Saul through Solomon times. So that's a line that we have there, which again is peace, peace, shalom, shalom. And then the last one is from the book of Samuel. Thus you shall say, all hail and peace be both unto you, and peace be to your house, and peace be unto all you have. So this is another line that mentions peace repetitively in it, full of the idea of shalom. So you can see shalom, 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 shalom. So those are lines of flipping, transformation of a flip, of a redemption, and a peace. And by going through those 9 lines, saying those 9 lines with a person who had a bad dream, they feel better after having that scary dream.
Who's interpreting the dream?
No one interpreted. They didn't even have to interpret the dream, because the person already comes to them with that fear that they, to some extent, they've interpreted it themselves when they know that they've had a dream that they're upset about. So the rabbis again said, well, that the people are, you're not, when you have a bad dream like that and you know it's bad, the people aren't really interpreting the dream. You're not going to ask them to make it happen. That's foolish. You're not really interpreting. That's what they said. Interpret? You're not going to interpret that dream. You know it's a bad dream. You don't need it interpreted, but you need it fixed. You need it changed. We're going to get to the dreams that need interpretation, trust me. The Gemara relates, Amemar and Mar Zutra and Rav Ashi were sitting together, and these are all rabbis that live in Babylonia. They said, let each and every one of us say something that the other has not heard. One of them began and said, one who saw a dream and does not know what he saw should stand before the priest when they lift their hands during the priestly blessing and say the following, Master of the universe, I am yours and my dreams are yours. I dreamed a dream and I do not know what it is. Whether I have dreamed of myself, whether my friends have dreamed of me, or whether I have dreamed of others. If the dreams are good, strengthen them and reinforce them like the dreams of Joseph. And if the dreams require healing, heal them like the bitter waters of Marah by Moses, our teacher, and like Miriam from her leprosy, and like Hezekiah from his illness, and like the bitter waters of Jericho by Elisha. And just as you transform the curse of Balaam the wicked into a blessing, so transform all my dreams for me for the best. And he should complete his prayer together with the priest so that the congregation responds, Amen, both to the blessing of the priest and to his individual requests. And if he is not able to recite this entire formula, he should say, Majestic one on high, who dwells in power, you are peace and your name is peace. May it be your will that you bestow upon us peace. So there's a long form of this prayer and a short form of this prayer. But the idea, of course, is bringing in some of these things that we just read, some of these stories that the rabbis know, of things being transformed from illness or plague or death into something that people can live with. And in some cases, again, this is how serious they saw how bad the dreams would be for people. Look, you can call it what you want, but this is definitely, in my mind, this is mental health. This is literally trying to find ways for people to find peace, for them to literally be able to have the thoughts in their head that are so scary to them not be scary. Is there a formula that we can do? Well, the rabbis say it requires a little bit of power. It requires the priests to be there when the priests are blessing the people like this, to get that prayer in while they're doing that, while they're doing the duchenin, it's called, doing the birkat kohanim. Do that, say those words when they do that. Or again, there's a short version of this, which is, the short version, Adir Mamarom, right? The blessed one of on high, right? Shochen b'gvura, ata shalom v'shimcha shalom. Yehi ratzon milfanecha shetasim aleinu shalom. And that's a famous kind of like formula for prayers, older even than Baruch Ata Adonai Aleinu, right? Is Yehi ratzon milfanecha. May it be your will, God. May it be acceptable to you, God, to give us peace. So what we're talking about here again is people feeling peace, feeling a sense of stability and a sense of wholeness when they're scared. Sometimes it happens when people are asleep and they wake up with that fear, and sometimes they have that fear and they can't sleep. So there's a remedy, there's a formula for it. Why? Why? So you can get it fixed? Or so you remember it? Look, we're going to get to if you have good dreams, it's not necessarily bad, but there is a feeling like, we're going to get to it, which is always this feeling like, if you have too much good stuff happening, you're going to get the evil eye. We're going to get to that, I promise. Well, I'm not 100% sure, but I think we'll get to it today. But there's this sense of, that's one of the reasons why they don't want to talk about bragging about your good dreams. Because I think it really does, and you're going to see, it goes back to Joseph. Joseph gets into trouble when he starts bragging about his good dreams. Doesn't. If you go around and tell everybody, hey, I just dreamed I was getting a Lamborghini. How does that good? Because if you get the Lamborghini, then everybody's going, oh, the guy gets everything he dreams about. And if he doesn't, then people are like, why does he do that? Why does he tell people he's dreaming about that kind of stuff? It makes him look like he's, superficial. There's nothing good about it. There's nothing good about walking around telling people I had a dream that I drove out of my Lamborghini. There's nothing good about that. But yeah, it definitely is an issue of creating evil eye. And we're going to get to that. We've talked about it before, but we're going to get to it today too. So, yep. Oh yeah, like right now. I forgot how close it was. It's right now. Another began and said, I really thought this was further. That shows you where my mind is, but this is an interesting text. This one's a weird one, by the way. I will admit it, but this one, I have tried this. I don't know that it works. But this one requires not only words, but also some hand motions on this. You can try this at home. There's nothing bad about it. I mean, it's working on it. I don't know, the magic. So, and it doesn't say who said this. It just says another person said this. One who enters a city and fears the evil eye should hold the thumb of his right hand in his left hand and the thumb of his left hand in his right hand. So that's a little bit of one of these things. Right? And recite the following. I, state your name, son of Stanley. Right? You gotta say your dad's name. Some come from the descendants of Joseph, over whom the evil eye has no dominion. As it is stated, Joseph is a fruitful vine by a fountain. Its branches run over the wall. And do not read Alein, but rather Olein, who not, again, a vine by a fountain, but over the eye. And the evil eye has no dominion over him. Rabbi Yossi, son of Rabbi Hanina, said, derive it from here, from what is stated in Jacob's blessing of Joseph's sons. Let them grow like fish to a multitude in the midst of the earth. Just as fish in the sea are covered by water, and the evil eye has no dominion over them, as they cannot be seen, so too the offspring of Joseph. The evil eye has no dominion over them. And if he is concerned about his own evil eye, lest it damage others, he should look at the left side of his nostril. What are they talking about here? A little bit of hand motion? No, I'm talking about that. I'm talking about looking at your left nostril through your eye. What they're talking about is don't give other people the evil eye. And if you're worried that you are, there's a little trick here to stop giving evil eye to people, which is look down at your nostril. I don't know. Yeah, maybe it helps. I don't know. I've never given the evil eye to anybody. Not that I know of. Evil eye is when you look at somebody with jealousy. When you look at somebody and say, I want their stuff. If people are doing that to you, it creates negative energy.
Jealousy?
When you really want to take their stuff. What? You give them curses. That's not the same thing. I'm going to show you something. So we've talked about this before. Evil eye is a serious thing because what happens is that when I talk about, again, not creating jealousy, and people do it all the time. I mean, we live in a society now where we've gone off the deep end, where people post all their stuff that they're doing on Facebook, social media, and they're literally, that's not a Jewish thing to do ostensibly because we don't brag about stuff. You're not supposed to boast about your wealth. Well, it's not good form anyways, but it also, according to Jewish tradition, in our mind, it creates evil eye, it creates negative energy. No, because you don't own that. You don't own the sun. You don't own the sunset.
He's bragging though, that he has.
A good view.
That he's better off than
Any,
others.
no, anybody could take that view. They could go up by his house. They could go up on the hill and take the same picture. That's exactly, no, that, if he took a picture of his house inside his house and said, look how beautiful my house is, then he's boasting and he's bragging about it. But he's not, he's taking a picture from his backyard, which is basically saying, look, I'm looking at how beautiful the sunset is. And he doesn't own the sunset. That's a perfect example of something that he's encouraging, that you could argue other people to appreciate the sunset.
Boasting. No, he is, because he lives in a spot. So he's boasting the fact that he can afford that house in that spot.
I don't see that. I mean, maybe he is, but I didn't see it that way. If somebody posts, if you had a house, if you have a house that, I think it's the exact opposite. If you take a picture from the other side and show your house and brag about your house from the other side, then it's boasting. But showing what you're showing what you're seeing in your backyard, I mean, the view that you have is essentially, you're saying, look at what I'm seeing, which is beauty, which again is not, he doesn't own what he just looked at. If he owned it, then you could say, yeah, he's showing off his car, he's showing off his boat, he's showing whatever. Look, I mean, it's a sick thing. So here's here's an amulet that I bought in Israel. They sell these all over the place. There's a hamsa, right? But it also has the eye in it. It has the blue eye. Now the blue eye is to counteract the evil eye. So by keeping the blue eye on the hamsa is also a way of keeping off the evil eye. But sometimes they even put a eye on it. That's an eye, a little blue eye. You can't see it, but that's a blue eye. Here, I'll show it here so that people can see it. I'm going to show it here. There's the blue eye on the hamsa. So what that does is it counteracts the evil eye. So if someone's looking at you with an evil eye, it stops it. The reason why it's blue is because it's like the waters, right? The waters protect us. And so when Joseph's children are being blessed by Jacob, when Ephraim and Manasseh are being blessed, he says they should be like the fish of the sea. Well, number one, there's a lot of them. There's a lot of fish in the sea, right? So that's first blessing, is that they're going to be numerous like the fish. But they're also covered, the rabbis interpret that, is that the fish can't be seen because they're in the water. Now we see them when they jump out of the water. We see them when they get close to the surface, but mostly you don't see them. You don't see the fish. And so the best thing is, don't attract attention. Don't be out there where they can see you and catch you. And so if you attract attention, then you're going to get caught. And so it's a good idea to keep a low profile, especially with your stuff. Don't put it out on display. People will get jealous of it. And quite frankly, they may be encouraged to steal it from you. Now, they don't say that always, but they're also kind of hinting that the government might come along and just pull that up too. They'll say, you know what? You don't need to have that. It's too nice. So they're also worried about the government coming in and taking your stuff too.
Okay.
You know, eminent domain. Because it happens in the Bible, right? You know? Yeah, but it's your property. It's something you have. The famous story of King Achav, King Ahab, who liked this field that this other guy had, and he trumped up charges against him and took the guy's, killed him and took his stuff. So yeah, it's good to keep a low profile. It's good to not brag about your stuff. I mean, it's a tough one, but because look, you want to have nice stuff and you want to, but it's why in the Orthodox world, you'll see people who are super wealthy and you'll have no idea they're wealthy. You'll be like, are you kidding me? Yeah, yes, he's not Jewish. But there's people in the Jewish world who are super wealthy, who have no idea. No idea by the way they live, by the way they dress, by the things they do. You have no idea. Because the ostentatiousness of it is seen as going against this Jewish value of keeping a low profile. And also, again, spending money on yourself versus taking care of other people and taking care of the community. They're not saying you have to live like a poor person, but on the other hand, they're also saying, what are your priorities? Well, it's a tough one. It's a tough one. And so they're also saying you better not have evil eye on other people, right? And if you do, you got to work on that too. There's some skills, there's some tools that you can do. This is, folks, I've said this before. This is why the most famous Yiddish phrase is kenahora, right? No evil eye. Kenahora doesn't mean bad things shouldn't happen to you. It does, kind of, right? But it actually means no evil eye. You're supposed to say it when something good happens, and you're supposed to say it after a good thing when you say, oh, that person has beautiful children, kenahora. It's so that you didn't just cause people to have an evil eye against what you just said. What beautiful children, kenahora. Yeah, you don't, you just realized that you said something. And sometimes you have to, but that's why people said kenahora all the time. It wasn't because it wasn't because they wanted bad things to happen. They didn't want bad things to happen, and they didn't want to attract attention by pointing out a good thing. Of course, look, it's kind of scary when you think that whenever anything good happens to you, someone's going to take it away. But look, the Jewish people had a lot of stuff taken away. So we had reasons to be worried of the evil eye, right? You had to keep a low profile. Because any government could take anything they wanted from you because you had no protection. So to be like Joseph's kids, traveling under the radar. Yeah. It's important. I mean, it's something to think about. So, yeah, that's a little bit about the evil eye. Let's read this. This section is a little less about dreams, but connected to these issues of drawing attention to things. Another began and said, one who is sick should not reveal it on the first day of his illness, so that his luck should not suffer. From there on, he may reveal it, like that which Rava does when he falls ill. On the first day, he does not reveal it. From there on, he says to his servant, go out and announce Rava is sick. Those who love me will pray that God will have mercy on me, and those who hate me will rejoice over my distress. As it is written, rejoice not when your enemy falls, and let your heart not be glad when he stumbles, lest the Lord see it and will displease him, and he will turn his wrath, and it will turn his wrath from him. From Proverbs, the joy of my enemy over my distress will also assist my healing. So the guy actually is saying, look, if I'm really, really sick, you can tell people, because then they'll pray for me. And then the people who hate me, who say, good, he's sick, they'll take away my sickness. So only when people know you're really sick. It's an interesting one too. So it's a little bit about, again, calling attention to things. It shows you the kind of jealousy and the kind of stuff that people had. All right. But now back to dreams. The Gemara relates Shmuel, when he would see a bad dream, would say, and the dream speaks falsely, which is from the prophet Zechariah. When he would see a good dream, he would say, and no dreams speak falsely. Isn't it written, I speak with him in a dream? And that's from the book of Numbers. So he had two different sayings. One when he had a dream he didn't like, and another one when he had a dream he did like. So it shows you, well, maybe there are things that we say when we dream, but Rava raised the contradiction between these verses. On the one hand, it is written, I speak with him in a dream, and on the other hand, it is written, and the dream speaks falsely. The Gemara resolves this contradiction. This is not difficult, lo kasha, right? This is not a problem, because there are two types of dreams. Here, the verse, I speak with him in a dream, refers to dreams that come by means of an angel. Here, the verse, and the dreams speak falsely, refers to dreams that come by means of a demon. Well, that's interesting. And the word for demon here is the shed, which is one of the other names they use for demon. Shadin. So they recognize that dreams come from different places. They don't necessarily come from the same place, these dreams. Sometimes they come from the good side and sometimes they come from the dark side. So they recognize that not all dreams come from the same place. They don't originate from the same source. Wow. And now we're going to get into who interprets the dreams. An interesting discussion on something we read earlier, which is that the dream isn't the whole thing. It's the interpretation of the dream. Number one, that it can make it come true, or it makes it real once it's been interpreted. And the other thing is that the dream itself is only part of it. The way it's interpreted can actually make the difference. Why? Well, if you think about it, because if you feel the dream is an indication that you need to change your behavior, okay, that could be good. But if you feel that the dream, especially a bad dream, is going to happen and it's going to be tragic, that's going to cause you a lot of angst, as we already have seen. But now we're going to get into like how real this is. Rabbi Bizna bar Zavda said that Rabbi Akiva said, that Rabbi Panda said, that Rabbi Nahum, Rav Nahum said, that Rabbi Birayim said, in the name of one elder. And who is he? Rabbi Benaiah. This is where it all goes back. There were 24 interpreters of dreams in Jerusalem. One time I dreamed a dream and went to each of them to interpret it. What one interpreted for me, the other did not interpret for me. And nevertheless, all of the interpretations were realized in me. To fulfill that which was stated, all dreams follow the mouth of the interpreter. So the guy says, I told the dream to 24 people. They all gave me different interpretations and they all came true. So here the rabbis reinforce this idea that if the dream is interpreted, that's like the opening of the letter, right? Once you interpret the dream, then it's become like a letter that you've opened, and then you now have the message. So he said it was interpreted a lot of ways, and they all came true. But it also shows us then that the dream is almost less important than what the interpreter actually says. And that is what makes the dream come true, or that's what makes an aspect of the dream come true, is when the interpreter says what it means. The Gemara asks, is that to say that all dreams follow the mouth? Is a verse cited in corroboration? The Gemara responds, yes, and in accordance with the opinion of Rabbi Elazar, as Rabbi Elazar said, from where does it derive that all dreams follow the mouth of the interpreter? As it is stated in the story of the dreams of Pharaoh's two ministers. The butler said to Pharaoh, and it came to pass as he interpreted to us, so it was. Rava said one must attach a caveat to this. This is only in the case where it is interpreted for him in a manner akin to the dream, where the interpretation is relevant to the dream, as it is stated in the story of Joseph's interpretation of the dreams of Pharaoh's two ministers. Each man according to his dream did he interpret. Let me just see if I have to, let me just finish this next part. With regard to Joseph's interpretation of these dreams, the Gemara asks, it is written, the baker saw the interpretation was good. And where did the baker know that the interpretation was good? Rabbi Elazar said, this teaches that each of them was shown his dream and the interpretation of the other's dream. That is, he knew that it was the correct interpretation. And so this is the famous story of Joseph interpreting the dreams in the prison of the baker and the wine taster. When he tells the people what their dreams mean, and remember, he told the baker that he was going to be promoted, and he told the steward that he was going to, he told the steward that he was going to be rewarded, and the baker was going to be punished. What it tells us is that
That's when he was in jail, right?
yeah, when he was in jail and he interpreted the dream. And remember, the steward then tells Pharaoh, hey, but remember, it takes him 2 years to tell. It takes the guy 2 years to tell Pharaoh what happened. But what the rabbis interpret from this is really interesting midrash here, which is that the dream interpretation that Joseph gave them, they knew it was true. Because not only did they get the dream, they knew what the dream meant. So sometimes when someone's interpreting a dream for you, you already know what they're going to say because that was also in the dream. And they're saying that if you know what's in the dream already, there's no interpretation. It's essentially he's just repeating what you already know. So it doesn't really follow that there could be any difference of opinion on it. It's exactly what it is. And they're saying, not only did they know their dream, but they knew the other person's dream. So the baker knew the steward's dream, and the steward knew the baker's dream. So they both knew the other dream, and they knew what was happening. And so they knew it. When Joseph told them that, then they realized, of course, that this was real and that this was not just a dream, that this was going to happen. And of course, it says the baker was very scared when he knew what Joseph told him was going to happen. Now, the interesting thing about that was that the story in the Bible doesn't really tell us what happens. Other than we know that the baker got executed, just like Joseph said. So that's why the steward knows that Joseph is really good at interpreting dreams, because he knew the truth, and he knew the truth. He didn't need Joseph to interpret it. He didn't need Joseph to have it come true, because he knew it in his heart already, that what the dream meant. We don't talk about what really happens in that story a lot, because it doesn't really say what happens. If you look at that story, which we're going to read in a few weeks in the Parsha, when they come into when they come in the very beginning of chapter 40, it says, sometime later the cupbearer and the baker of the king Egypt gave offense to the Lord, the king of Egypt. Pharaoh was angry with the two courtiers, the chief cupbearer and the chief baker. And he put them in the custody in the house of the prefect in the same prison house where Joseph was. Now it just says that they ticked off the Pharaoh, right? So it doesn't say what happened. Now it doesn't say it, but we interpret the interpretation of this, not the dream interpretation, but the text interpretation is what? What did they give offense to? How did they offend the king of Egypt? Anybody remember? The baker and the chief cupbearer, the steward, they have access to Pharaoh's food. If someone's going to kill the Pharaoh and poison him, they're the ones who do it. So one of the two of them, Pharaoh hears that one of them's trying to kill him. One of them's working to kill him. So one of the two, he doesn't know which one, so he's going to put both of them in prison. And as it turns out, Joseph, to some extent, not only interprets the dreams and figures out, which one was guilty, but once Pharaoh discovers it, and they tell him the dreams, right? And they saw, and it says right here, he saw they were distraught, and they told him the dreams, right? The chief cupbearer said the dream, and he told him the dream, and he says that means in 3 days you're going to be restored, and then he says to him, make sure when you get promoted back, tell them that I'm here for no reason. Chief baker sees how favorably he had interpreted. He went and told him his dream, did the same thing, and he says, in 3 days you're going to be impaled, right? You're going to be impaled on a pole, and the birds will pick off your flesh. Not exactly what he wanted to hear. And on the third day, his birthday, Pharaoh made a banquet for all his officials, and he singled out the chief cupbearer, chief baker from his officials, and he restored the chief cupbearer and placed the cup in Pharaoh's hand, but the chief baker he impaled just as Joseph had interpreted. Yet the chief cupbearer did not think of Joseph. He forgot him. So, of course, that's when the next Parsha picks up, 2 years. So until Pharaoh has his dream. So, by the way, it says it's the Pharaoh's birthday. That's probably the big party that he was going to have in the first place, where they're going to poison him. So, we don't know that for sure, but that's the interpretation of it. So the point is that when Joseph interprets the dreams, they know that the dreams are, they know what the dream, they know what the interpretation is already. They've already been kind of given the key to that. So the rabbis point out here in an interesting way, sometimes we have a dream and we know what the dream means. Pharaoh, of course, fulfills the dream, and to some extent, Joseph doesn't even see the fruition of the justice for 2 more years of doing the right thing by making this happen. But did Joseph make it happen? I mean, the Pharaoh is the one who made it happen. However, the Pharaoh figured out who was trying to kill him, we assume. He figured out the guilty party and had the guilty party executed. But did Joseph really make that happen? So if the baker was trying to kill him, he knew he was trying to kill him, and Joseph just exposed it, just told them what was really going on. You know, what's the key in that? The key is that Joseph sees that he sees the baker's guilt, if you will. I mean, again, if he's not guilty, Joseph at least sees the fact that things are not going to go well for the baker. So no matter what, Joseph's right. But what the rabbis interpret from this is that they knew it. That each of them knew not only what was happening to them was going to be the right thing, but what was going to happen to the other person was the right thing. So that, of course, we're supposed to infer from that, by the way, from the very beginning, that the dreams follow the mouth of the interpreter. So
Better be pretty good at interpreting.
with regard to the veracity of dreams, Rabbi Yochanan said, one who awakened in the morning and a specific verse happens into his mouth, it is a minor prophecy and an indication that in the content of the verse will be fulfilled. So that's specifically if you dream about a verse of Torah. Most of us are not going to do that. Most of us are not going to wake up with a verse of Torah in our mouth. But if you do, that's a good indication that that's going to happen. Rabbi Yochanan also said 3 dreams are fulfilled: a dream of the morning, a dream that one's fellow dreamed about him, and a dream that is interpreted within a dream. And some say that a dream that is repeated several times is also fulfilled, as it is stated, and for the dream that was doubled onto Pharaoh twice, it is because the thing is established by God, and God will shortly bring it to pass. And that, of course, is in the next chapter of Genesis, when the Pharaoh has dreams that are troubling him, and the cupbearer finally remembers, oh yeah, there's that guy Joseph that interprets dreams. I better get him for the Pharaoh because no one can help him. But what it's telling us is that when we have a dream, and we have that dream multiple times, like the Pharaoh did, because he had the dream that the stalks were swallowing, the 6 stalks were being swallowed, were swallowing the fat stalks, and that the skinny cows were swallowing the fat cows. Those 2 dreams, you remember Joseph says to him, that means God is definitely doing that. So sometimes we have a dream, it's not necessarily going to happen, but if we have 2 versions of the dreams, rabbis are saying that's going to happen. And we know that from Joseph's stories. So we know that that's going to happen. So that's one thing if it's doubled. And the other thing gets back to what we read before, which is if the dream is interpreted within the dream, so that we actually understand within the dream what the meaning of the dream is. If we know what the dream means from within the dream, then that's going to also happen. And then they also said the dream that you have in the morning. So as John was saying, if you're dreaming in the morning, you remember your dream when you wake up, that means you didn't have very good sleep. Could mean that you didn't have really good sleep right before you got up, which happens a lot, where people either start to get disturbed by sounds outside or by light outside, and their sleep gets disturbed maybe because their spouse or their partner is making noise. Oftentimes those are the dreams that we do remember because we now understand that our REM sleep was disturbed, or deep sleep.
And 41.
Uh-huh.
And Joseph says to Pharaoh, Pharaoh's dreams are one and the same. God has told Pharaoh what he is about to do.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So he's saying that God is in Pharaoh's brain
Mm-hmm. Telling him what's going to happen.
at night.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And so, I mean,
So
one
he's
of
not
the,
interpreting. He's communicating as prophecy.
yeah, but well, he's saying that that dream is going to happen. So sometimes, again, our dreams, this is where, again, this is the difference between being a dream being fulfilled and a dream being interpreted. Because the rabbis recognize that there are dreams that are, you want it interpreted, especially if it's a kind of a bad dream. If it's a good dream, maybe you want that dream fulfilled, right? Now, they're definitely talking about hoping that a dream that is especially a bad dream isn't fulfilled. But they understand it's a slippery slope because if you tell someone that dream and it's interpreted, are you going to make it fulfilled? And so this is where the rabbis are kind of telling you, you can get a lot of different interpretations for your dreams. That's one thing. But will you see those things being fulfilled? If the interpreter is a good interpreter, they're gonna find the truth in that dream and they're going to expose it. What the rabbis also said is that, look, there are 24 interpreters in Jerusalem, and they all could find something, a kernel of truth in your dream. It might be different. I mean, according to them, it was different, but there was a truth that was in each one of those dreams. So to some extent, it's also, you could be say, hey, look, I went to a therapist and they told me something. I went to another therapist and they told me something. I went to another therapist and they told me something. I went to 24 different therapists and they all told me different things. Doesn't mean that they're not all true, by the way. They might not all be true, but you could get different truths that come out of your psychological profile or the psychological dream or the psychological, the essence of this. It's interesting that there still could be a piece of truth in those different things. It might seem like, how can they all be true? But there are truths that are not necessarily mutually exclusive. So if somebody says, well, you have fears about losing money. Okay, that could be true. You could also have a dream that you're hoping that, you'll be more successful than your parents or whatever. That could also be true. Those things are not mutually exclusive, right? So people are picking up on different stuff. I'm just saying stuff that, like I know people have. You could say, I have a fear of dying. Okay, so I had that in my dream. And my dream means I have a fear of dying. You can also say, that my dream was a dream where I felt like, my life was out of control. Well, those are both very well be true. Or it can be another thing where somebody would say out of that same dream that, you had this dream. And by the way, we're going to get to some of the specific things that people dream about, which, are things that people do have, like your teeth falling out. And how do you interpret that, right? How do you interpret that? How do you interpret a wall falling down? How do you interpret this thing, an animal? They're going to get to that. But what's interesting is, again, there could be more than one truth in that interpretation, depending on, again, the way the person's going to look at it. It doesn't necessarily mean they're all right, but they could all be right. There could be lots of people being right about your interpretation, about how they're interpreting. So definitely when you see something twice in your dream, a very good indication, again, that it's going to happen. The message is like, again, what Joseph says to Pharaoh, God is telling you that because it's going to happen. It's not maybe going to happen, it's going to happen. So Joseph tells him, when you see something twice, it's going to happen. And that's what the rabbis say is the proof text for that. So let's look at some of these things. Rabbi Shmuel Bar Nachmani said that Rabbi Yonatan said, a person is shown in his dream only the thoughts of his heart when he was awake, as is evidenced by what Daniel said to Nebuchadnezzar. As it is stated, as for you, O king, your thoughts came upon your bed. What should come to pass hereafter? Let's just read that first. That's from the book of Daniel. It's when Daniel is dealing with Nebuchadnezzar, the king of the Babylonians. And he comes to him with his dreams. Very much like Joseph. Daniel is very much like a Joseph. He's a Jewish courtier who's serving a foreign king. Just like Joseph served Pharaoh, Daniel is serving Nebuchadnezzar. A lot of similarities between them. But this is something that psychologists, many psychologists who study dreams say today, which is that everything we dream about is a reflection of things that we see in our waking life. All the things, even the most obscure versions of those things, or things that we don't even like. How could what I dreamt about be from my waking life? And there are theories about dreams today, which are that we cannot do anything but dream. Our dreams are literally reconstructions of things that we see in our daily life. So that we see them in our dreams, even if they're strange, even if they're like bizarre versions of those things, even indistinguishable, like you can't even say that, is that really what, from something that I had during the day? There are people who say yes. Even the most obscure things are things that you've actually seen during the day that have made their way into your dream, but that there's stuff that you're processing stuff that you see. So there are people who say that that's what we just read. We're saying this now, today. It's pretty wild. I mean, this is literally telling us what people are finally saying today. Now, again, that's not very spiritual or necessarily very magical. It's maybe anti-magical to say that. But the rabbis just said it. And they said it in a very profound way, which is they're all things that you see during the day. I will just show you something very interesting. There's a really famous guy. We sometimes call him the father of psychology. And Sigmund Freud said, dream content is derived from real life. It's not identical to it. He thought that dreams are connected to real life by unconscious desires. So, he was very, very, very big on dream interpretation. He really tried to, when working with his patients, he really tried to get them to open up about their dreams, and then he would analyze them. Look, some of the stuff he said has kind of been proven to not be true. There's huge reassessments of some of the stuff that Freud said. Huge problems in some cases, people say, with the things that he did. However, there are pieces of it that are still have yet to be disproven. And more importantly, Freud took dream analysis seriously and helped modern psychology take dream seriously. I'm not saying every therapist, spends time with dream analysis. There are a lot who, you could sit with a therapist for 5 years and they'll never, ever talk to you about dreams. And they don't even care, and they won't ask you, and you'll bring up a dream and they'll tell you it's just a dream. There's people in psychology who don't care about dreams anymore. But there are a lot of people who are interested in it, and there are therapists who specialize in working with people on dream interpretation and who study this a lot, who dedicate their lives to this. And so he really kind of, to some extent, Freud kind of institutionalized a scientific, the scientific perspective on dream interpretation, which was a huge thing. Whether you like Freud or not, that's a huge thing that Freud did, which was open up the importance of analyzing dreams. So that's one thing, which I think is fascinating. So that's one possibility. And if you wish to say instead that it is derived from here, a related verse, that you may know the thoughts of your heart, also from Daniel, how will you know the thoughts of your heart? By their being revealed into you in a dream. Rava said, know that this is the case. For one is neither shown a golden palm tree nor an elephant going through the eye of a needle in a dream. In other words, dreams only contain images that enter a person's mind. So when people dream about stuff that are interesting and difficult to make sense of, they are there because there are images that are in your mind already. I told you before, John, this, and I didn't know that we were going to read it today. The famous line again of a rich person entering heaven is like a camel or an elephant entering the eye of a needle. It's not that line, but it's, where do you think they got it from, right? So this is when you want to understand, the rabbinic sources for Jesus's parables and sayings. And again, there's different ways of translating that. Here's the line from Matthew. You can see it. Verily I say unto you, he verily, that a rich man shall hardly enter into the kingdom of heaven. And again, I say to you, it is easier for a camel to go through the eye of a needle than for a rich man to enter the kingdom of God. So, yeah, that's the line. Which again, if you want to know what Jesus thought about rich people, he didn't think highly of them. Talmud doesn't quite say that. It doesn't disparage wealth. It does tell you, you better be sure you're taking care of other people with your wealth. But again, where you get phrases like eye of a needle, a camel going through an eye of a needle, an elephant going through an eye of a needle, here. By the way, it's only the last 100 years or so that Jews were reading Christian Bible and that Christians were reading the Talmud, where they go, oh, I guess this is where it came from. So there wasn't a lot of recognition that this is necessarily was in the Talmud. We now know that, and we are open to saying it. And now that we have other texts like the Dead Sea Scrolls and other things from the period that we've uncovered, we understand even more so how these things were shared. All right. So here's an interesting thing about dreams, a little story. We're going to read some of these before we finish up. You'll like these. The Gemara relates that the Roman emperor said to Rabbi Yoshua, son of Rabbi Hananiah, you Jews say that you are extremely wise. If so, tell me what I will see in my dream. So this is stupid, because he says to him, not what did I dream about, but what will I dream about? It's stupid, because I can tell you what you're going to dream about, because you'll go home and dream it if I tell you. Now you're all going to be dreaming about camels and elephants going through an eye of a needle. It's inevitable. But anyways, here's what he said to him. Rabbi Yoshua said to him, you will see the Persians capture you and enslave you and force you to herd unclean animals with a golden staff. He thought the entire day about the images described to him by Rabbi Yoshua, and that night he saw it in his dream. I mean, it's obvious. King Shapur of Persia, right, on the other side of the coin, right, the other side of the world, whatever, the other side of the army, the border. King Shapur said to his rabbi, right, Yoshua, Rabbi Yoshua is in the Byzantine Empire, and Shmuel is in the Sasanian Empire. They were enemies, the Byzantine king and the Sasanian king. You Jews say that you're extremely wise. If so, tell me what I will see in my dream. And Shmuel said to him, you will see the Romans come and take you into captivity and force you to grind date pits in mills of gold. He thought the entire day about the images described by him to Shmuel, and that night he saw it in a dream. So again, what do the Roman kings dream about? Being slaves to the Persians. What do the Persians dream about? Being slaves to the Romans. And again, the rabbis basically say, I can make you dream about what you want to play a game with me. I'm gonna, he challenges them, and of course, backfires on them. It backfires on them. So if somebody asks you what they're going to dream about, and you tell them, and they go home and dream about it, you really didn't do anything. But it shows you don't be a smart aleck about it either. This story's got nothing to do with Persians and Romans. These are Jewish people doing this to each other. Let's look at this one. Bar Chadiah was this is probably where we're going to finish on this story. Bar Chadiah was an interpreter of dreams. For one who gave him a fee, he would interpret the dream favorably, and for the one who did not give him a fee, he would interpret the dream unfavorably. So John, you want to go back to how do you interpret a dream favorably and unfavorably? It kind of was, I'm getting a tip or not? Am I getting paid or not?
Kind of sounds like the people that were paid in the election, right, to promote one side or the other.
Maybe. Yeah, there's versions of that today. People who get paid, in this case, it's really someone who got paid. The person that paid him, he gave him what he wanted. The person that didn't pay him, he didn't give him what he wanted. But let's look what happens with this. There was an incident in which both Abaye and Rava, who are two rabbis at the same time, in Persia and Babylonia community, they saw an identical dream. And when they asked Bar Hadiah to interpret it, Abaye gave him money and paid his fee, while Rava did not give him money. They said to him, the verse, your ox shall be slain before your eyes, and you shall eat thereof. That's from Deuteronomy, was read to us in our dream. Remember what we talked about? If you have a text in your dream, if you have a phrase of the Bible in your dream, it's going to happen, right? He interpreted their dream, and to Rava he said, right? The one who didn't pay him, your business will be lost, and you will derive no pleasure from eating because of the extreme sadness of your heart. To Abaye, right, the one who paid him, he said, your business will profit, and you will be unable to eat due to the joy in your heart. You'll be so happy you don't want to eat. So even though both of them, you said, you shall not eat thereof, one is you're not eating for a good reason, and the other one you're not eating for a bad reason. So he interpreted the dreams based on whether he was getting paid. Okay, it's not over. They said to him, the verse, you shall beget sons and daughters, but they shall not be yours, for they shall go into captivity. So they both had the same dream from Devarim, from Deuteronomy. That was read to us in our dream. He interpreted their dreams, and to Rava he said, in its literal adverse sense, to Abaye he said, your sons and daughters will be numerous, and your daughters will be married to outsiders, and it will seem as if they were taken into captivity. So to Rava he says, no, your sons and daughters are going to get taken away. But to Abaye he says, you're going to have a lot of family. It's wonderful. And your daughters will be carried away as brides. It'll seem like they're not, it's kind of sad because they're not living with you anymore, but it's not so bad. They're marrying nice people. That's not very nice. So he's told Rava two bad things, and he's told Abaye two good things. And it was the same verse. It was the same verse. Not done yet. They said to him, the verse, your sons and daughters shall be given to other people. Deuteronomy 28:32. That's just a few verses before, right? It was read to us in our dream. That's from the same curse. It's from the curses, the Kitavo. These are not good text. I mean, these are scary texts. To Abiah, he said, your sons and daughters will be numerous. You say that they should marry your relatives, and your wife said they should marry her relatives, and she will impose her will upon you, and they will be given to her relatives, which is like another nation as far as you're concerned. So, let's look at the other one. Of course, the other one, to Rava, he said, your wife will die, and your sons and daughters will come into the hands of another woman. Oh, that's horrible. That's even worse. He doesn't even just give him the literal version of it. He says, oh, no, this is really bad. Your wife's going to die and your sons and daughters are going to be turned over to their stepmother. Well, I'll read that. It says it right here. Rava said to Rabbi Yirmiyah bar Abba, said that Rav said, what is the meaning of that which is written in the verse, your sons and daughters shall be given unto another people? This refers to the father's wife, the stepmother. This is also, that's really bad. But what is this? He's basically saying to the guy who paid him, to Abiah, he's saying to him, you want your kids to marry into your family, your wife wants them to marry into her family, they're going to her family. It's not so bad. It's not they're going to get taken away. It's not they're getting taken into captivity and given to another people. They're not going to be taken into exile. They're just going to the other family. It's okay. It's not so bad. Robbers are really bad. Your wife is dying and your new wife is going to take on these other kids. It's not going to be good. Not over. They said to him, the verse, go your way, eat your bread with joy, and drink your wine with merry heart. That's from Ecclesiastes, right? That's in our dream, was read to us in our dream. To Abiah, he said, your business will profit, and you will eat and drink and read the verse out of joy of your heart. To Rava, he said, your business will be lost. You will slaughter but not eat. You will drink wine and read passages of the Bible in order to allay your fears. Not good. Not good stuff. So he is, again, flipping it for one, good to the other, right? I mean, well, actually more literal or just reading it bad. Okay? Not over. They said to him, the verse, you shall carry much seed out into the field and shall gather little in it, for the locust shall consume it. That's also from Deuteronomy chapter 28. It's from the same section as the previous two, not the last one of the previous before that. Was read to us in our dream. To Abiah, he said from the beginning of the verse that he will enjoy an abundant harvest. To Rava, he said from the end of the verse that his harvest will be destroyed. So there he just took which part of the verse was good. That's going to Abiah. To the bad part was going to Rava. It's not over. Just another couple ones. They said to him, the verse, you shall have olive trees throughout all your borders, but you shall not anoint yourself with the oil. In the same section of, again, all the things that are not going to happen, where your olives will drop off. Again, these are the curses. It was read to us in our dream. And again, to Abiah, he said from the beginning of the verse, and to Rava, he said from the end of the verse. Another, same thing. We have a couple more. They said to him, the verse, all the peoples of the earth shall see that the name of the Lord is called upon you, and they shall be afraid of you. That's from the first parts of the chapter 28, the good parts, the blessings. That was read to us in the dream. And to Abiah, he said, your name will become well known as the head of the yeshiva, and you will be feared by all. To Rava, he said, the king's treasury was broken into, and you will be apprehended as a thief, and everyone will draw an a fortiori inference from you. If Rava, who is wealthy and of distinguished lineage, can be arrested on charges of theft, what will become of the rest of us? Indeed, the next day, the king's treasury was burglarized, and they came and apprehended Rava. So again, maybe Rava should have paid the guy, because he keeps giving him these verses in the dream, and he's getting the bad part. He's getting all the bad parts. And again, it's not just bad for Rava, it's bad for everybody, because the a fortiori, the kal v'chomer in this is that, God, if they can take Rava, they can take anybody, because Rava's connected. So this is really bad. And it's saying it's not just bad for him, but it's for everybody. Abiah and Rava said to him, this is not a line from the Bible now. They're not quoting the Bible. We saw lettuce on the mouth of the barrels. To Abiah, he said, your business will double like lettuce whose leaves are wide and wrinkled. To Rava, he said, your work will be bitter like a lettuce stalk. Depends on what part of the lettuce you eat. Parts of it are bitter, parts of it are nice. Again, same thing, but how is it being interpreted? They said to him, we saw meat on the mouths of barrels. To Abiah, he said, your wine will be sweet and everyone will come to buy meat and wine from you. To Rava, he said, your wine will spoil and everyone will go to buy meat in order to eat with it, to dip the meat in your vinegar, which means your wine's going to be worth nothing. You have to sell it as vinegar. Not good. They said to him, we saw a barrel hanging from a palm tree. I forgot. This goes on. There's two more. We saw a barrel hanging from a palm tree. To Abiah, he said, your business will rise like a palm tree. To Rava, he said, your work will be sweet like dates, which are very cheap in Babylonia, indicating that you will be compelled to sell your merchandise at a cheap price. Again, same thing, just interpreted differently. They said to him, we saw a pomegranate taking root on the mouth of barrels. To Abiah, he said, your business, and obviously the barrel is a reference to business, which is like they do business on the top of barrels, right? To Abiah, he said, your business will increase in value like a pomegranate. To Rava, he said, your work will go sour like a pomegranate. They said to him, we saw a barrel fall into a pit. To Abiah, he said, your merchandise will be in demand, is the adage. Bread falls in a pit and it is not found. In other words, everyone will seek your wares and they will not find them to increase demand. To Rava, he said, your merchandise will be ruined and you will throw it away into a pit. They said to him, we saw a donkey foal standing near our heads, brain. To Abiah, he said, you will be a king, that is to say, head of the yeshiva, and an interpreter will stand near you to repeat your teachings to the masses out loud. And to Rava, he said, I saw the words Peter Hamor, firstborn donkey, erased from your tefillin, right? Rava said to him, I myself saw it, and it was there. Berachot said to him, the letter Vav of the word Peter Hamor is certainly erased from your phylacteries. And now we get to the end. Ultimately, Rava went to Berachot alone. Rava said to him, I saw the outer door of my house fall. Berachot said to him, your wife will die, as she is the one who protects your house. So your wife is the wall. Rava said to him, I saw my front and back teeth fall out. It's a dream of your teeth falling out. He said to him, your sons and daughters will die. Rava said to him, I saw two doves that were flying. He said to him, you will divorce two women. Rava said to him, I saw two turnip heads, gargelidae, which is the Aramaic for it. He said to him, you will receive two blows with a club shaped like a turnip. That same day, Rava went and sat in the study hall the entire day. He discovered these two blind people were fighting with each other. Rava went to separate them and they struck Rava with two blows. When they raised their staffs to strike him an additional blow, he said, that's enough for me. I only saw two. I'm not going to get beaten again. And here is the end of the whole thing. Ultimately, Rava came and gave him a fee. And then Rava said to him, I saw my wall fall. And Berachot said to him, you will acquire property without limits. Rava said to him, I saw Abiah's house fall, and its dust covered me. And Berachot said to him, Abiah will die, and his yeshiva will come to you. Rava said to him, I saw my house fall, and everyone came and took bricks. And he said to him, your teachings will be disseminated throughout the world. And Rava said to him, I saw my head split and my brain fell out. And he said to him, a feather will fall out of the pillow near your head. And Rabbah said to him, the Egyptian Hallel, the Hallel that celebrates the Exodus, was read to me in a dream. And he said, miracles will be performed by you. And no, I'm going to tell you, there's one more. We're going to read, oh, you're right. Wait a second. Hold it a second. Wait a second. No, that's no. That's no. The end of it is oh yeah. The end of it's right here. I apologize. We're going to read this right here. Right here. Barchadiah was going on with Rav on a ship. So in the end, of course, Rava gets all the good things. Rav was going on a ship. Barchadiah said, why am I going with a person for whom miracles will be performed? Lest the miracle will be that ship will sink and he alone will be saved. As Barchadiah was climbing onto the ship, a book fell onto him. Rava found it and saw, all dreams follow the mouth, written therein. He said to Barchadiah, scoundrel, it was dependent on you, and you caused me such suffering. I forgive you for everything except for the daughter of Rav Chisda, Rabbi's wife, whom you predicted would die. May it be your will that this man be delivered unto the hands of the kingdom that has no compassion to him. And so what did he find out? He found that text which said, you made all this stuff happen to me, and I can forgive you for everything except for my wife dying. Barchadiah said to himself, what will I do? We learn through tradition that the curse of a sage, even baseless, comes true. And all the more so in the case of Rava, as he cursed me justifiably. He said to himself, I will go into exile. As the master said, exile atones for transgression. So he said, I caused this. And Rava just cursed me. And read this as the end of the story. He arose, this is Barchadiah. He exiled himself to the seat of the Roman government. He went and sat by the entrance where the keeper of the king's wardrobe stood. The wardrobe guard dreamed a dream, just like Joseph's dreams, right? He said to Barchadiah, I saw in a dream that a needle pierced my finger. Barchadiah said to him, give me a zuz, right? Pay me. He did not give him a coin, so Barchadiah said nothing to him. Again, the guard said to him, I saw a worm that fell between my two fingers eating them. Barchadiah said to him, give me a zuz. He did not give it to him, so Barchadiah said nothing to him. Again, the guard said to him, I saw that a worm fell upon my entire hand, eating it. Barchadiah said to him, a worm fell upon and ate all the silk garments. They heard of this in the king's palace, and they brought the wardrobe keeper and were in the process of executing him. He said to them, why me? Bring the one who knew and did not say the information that he knew. He brought Barchadiah and said to him, because of your zuz, ruin came upon the king's silk garments. So why did this happen? You could have prevented it from happening by telling the dream. And of course, he didn't tell the dream because he didn't get paid. So he was doing the same kind of garbage that he did before. And this is the end of the story. This is where we're ending. So he's responsible for this stuff. And here's his punishment. This is how Barchadiah died. He thought he could get away from the curse, but he didn't. They tied 2 cedar trees together, this is the Romans, with a rope. They tied one of his legs to one cedar and one of his legs to the other cedar. And they released the rope until his head split open. Each tree went back to it and stood at its place, and Barchadiah was split and fell completely and split in two. And that was the Romans. They were great at torturing and killing people. And so that was splitting somebody in two by the force of tree that was being tied together and then released. The force of the tree splitting had so much force that it split the guy in two. It is kind of like it, but yeah, it's pretty bad. So hopefully none of you will dream about that tonight, but hopefully you do not dream about that tonight. But again, you see with the power of dreams, and it also teaches us the power that we have in interpreting those dreams. And there are some people, and unfortunately there are some therapists who are not very good people, and there are some people who are very good therapists. Unfortunately, Joyce wasn't here tonight. We talk about what a great helper she's been to people over the years in helping them understand stuff. And again, when people are motivated by money like Barchadiah was, it doesn't work out well for them. It's not that people who are therapists shouldn't get paid. Of course they should get paid. But the reality is they're doing it for money. And if they're withholding information from somebody that they could help them with because of money, you can wind up like this. So This is a guy who did not learn his lesson. He even went out into exile, and it didn't matter. He continued to do this thing of not helping people unless he got paid, or in some cases screwing with people's lives because he didn't get paid. So this is again teaching us that it's not just the dream, but also the way we interpret it, and the way it's being interpreted hopefully will give us healing and not do damage to us. But it teaches us that therapists also have a possibility of doing damage to us, which is a scary thought. But some therapists have done really bad things to people. Just ask Brian Wilson. Guy ruined his life, that doctor. So anyways, it's a very serious thing, a very big responsibility. So I don't know. We do not have class next week. I'll be out of town and hopefully bringing healing to people, but hopefully not just because I'm getting paid. No, it's something I think about. But thankfully, again, everybody will hopefully have good dreams. We'll see you. Well, some people who are coming on the meeting tomorrow night for the trip to Israel, and then Friday night we have services. We'll see you for that. Which awards? Next week. Yeah. I won't be there for that, just before it, for an event. All right, everybody. We'll see you later.
Thank you.
care.
Goodbye.
Take care. Bye-bye. Have good
Thank
dreams.
you,
Good dreams to you all.
Rabbi.
Thank you.
Good dreams to you.
Thank you.
Yeah.